So our video today was inspired by two videos put out in the last few days by Michael K. Vaughan and Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, where they talk about physical media versus digital media, and it fits in nicely with today's Monday Musing. Hello and welcome back to my channel, Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and I would like to talk today about DRM or digital rights management, which I think fits in well with the issues raised by both Greg and Michael in their videos. And I really want to look at the impact of DRM in our world, the world of books and reading and how we use ebooks and things like that. So, first of all, you may or may not know what DRM is, but of course, I will tell you. It's a technology used by publishers and distributors to protect their digital content. And in our case, especially ebooks, but it's also in, of course, audiobooks and other forms of digital media, music, films, and things that you get from online sources will contain within it this digital rights management. And what it does is it locks in this content that can only be used with a particular service, particular device, something like that. And it can only work with a specific key or license that's appropriate to that particular content. So if the provider loses the license to provide that content, it means you may lose the right yourself to access that content. So you might be thinking, well, that's not very good, is it? And to be honest, I don't think it is, and it's not particularly fair. Now, my good friend Sean D. Stanfast told me the other day, and I think he said it on one of our lives, that this has kind of always been the case, even with purchasing of CDs or DVDs, Blu-rays, that kind of thing. You basically purchase them under license. So if the distributor loses the license to have them, in effect, you should return or no longer use the CDs or DVDs that you bought. Now, of course, that's not going to happen, is it? And I don't really know, as I say, the ins and outs of it. I'm taking Sean at his word there, which of course I do trust. But it does seem extremely odd to me, so that in effect we don't own any of the content that we have. So we may own, we don't even own our books, or technically even these physical books probably behind us, which is extremely bizarre because, of course, it would be interesting to see companies try and enforce this, and especially with physical books, because there is a thriving secondhand book market where they are just sent around to different people willy-nilly. Now, of course, you can't do that with ebooks. Well, not legally anyway. You can't. You don't see a thriving secondhand ebook market, do you? So, of course, for the publishers and distributors, it's a good thing because it does help prevent piracy, and they would say, of course, it protects the intellectual property rights of the creators of the content that we use in the digital sphere. It does, of course, like many things, have a negative effect, especially on the consumer or the reader that it wants to use that product. So it limits how and where you can access the content you have purchased. And it can therefore make it difficult or even impossible for you to transfer that content to different platforms or different devices. Now, Michael was lamenting Comixology's demise and Amazon's takeover of it, and he cited cases where people lost their content or weren't able to find it easily and that kind of thing. Now, to me, of course, that's unacceptable. If you pay for something, you've paid for the right to use it. Arguably, of course, if the person who's provided you that content has lost the license to distribute it, then, of course, the issue becomes cloudy. But it's just another case of the consumer having to bear the brunt of, the corporate world, as it were, which, I personally find rather rather distasteful and also extremely frustrating. Now, I understand why they want to protect the intellectual property rights of content creators, but then, of course, doing such a thing does also maybe lead in some roundabout way to them increasing sales and things if people want to if people have to repurchase their content. I remember years ago, I think it was Bruce Willis, the actor, had some legal battle with, it might have been iTunes, I think, over the fact he had built up an extensive music library and he wanted to bequeath it to people in his will. And then there was this battle over who actually owned his music. So what it all comes down to is that we basically rent the content that we have for the duration of our lives, or for the duration that the provider has the license. So it means we don't own it at all, right? We're renting it, and we can't leave. All those books, all those ebooks you've built up, you can't leave them to your family to read after you've passed on. Your physical books, you can, because nobody, of course, is enforcing that. In some respects, I don't have a huge issue with that. When you buy an ebook for $1 or £1 or £2, $2. However, when you are paying the same price or more for an ebook than for a physical book, that's where I have an issue. I think that's kind of outrageous. So if you're paying $10, $15 for an ebook that can be taken away from you at a moment's notice when the license is revoked from the distributor or the publisher, and the rights have transferred to somebody else, and then you're expected to rebuy it, and you have paid the same amount as you would have done for a physical book, which of course you can keep and nobody can take away from you. So to me, that is extremely unacceptable. And also, I think it seems to me kind of an infringement of our rights. Again, I'm not a lawyer, I don't really know it, but it does seem an infringement of the rights of us as readers and consumers, that, when we purchase something, we expect to be able to use it as we see fit. And it means if we want to read it on our iPad, or we want to read it on our Kindle or something like that, if I want to share it with my parents, because, I could do that with the physical book, of course, I can't do that. Those rights have then been restricted through digital rights management, and, misuse of it or that kind of thing could find you locked out of it, unable to access the content that you have purchased, which of course, again, wouldn't happen with a physical book. Greg cites the case of a young student who had downloaded a copy of George Orwell's 1984, which had turned out to be a pirated copy. I believe they downloaded it from Amazon to use on their Kindle, and without the consumer's knowledge, without the student's knowledge, the product was removed from their device and the money was refunded. And I think Greg mentioned that Amazon no longer does this. However, it doesn't mean they won't do it again in the future, just because they don't do it at the moment. And the idea that, I've had ebooks that have changed their covers or have been updated in some way, maybe with a new formatting or a new table of contents, all done without me agreeing to it at the time. Maybe at some point in the past, when you sign up and you have all these terms and conditions, nobody goes through the whole things unless, of course, they are, a lawyer or anything like that. But, I don't remember signing anything specific that says, the content I've purchased can be edited and changed. One of the things that frustrates me a lot is when the cover changes, even though it's only an ebook. I have a thing against book covers that have film tie-in pictures or covers on them, right? I don't particularly like it. I don't like it necessarily when a book has now a major Netflix series or something like that on it. Even on my ebook, I don't want that to see. I quite like looking at the covers on the display of my, Kindle or on my iPad or whatever, and then, people come in and just change it. It seems wrong. It's like someone just coming into my house and, taking off a book from my shelf and replacing it with another one because they've updated the cover, and, they think I should have that one. So that to me does seem very wrong. Now, are there any ways around it? There are. There are some online book sellers that will sell DRM free content. However, generally you would have to go to kind of more nefarious sources which lead down distasteful routes such as piracy and illegal downloads, where you can get content that is free of digital rights management. There are tools such as Calibre, which I believe you can use to strip the DRM from content you've purchased, meaning that it cannot be altered, it cannot be censored, it cannot be fiddled with, and that kind of thing. However, again, in my discussion with Sean D. Stanfast, as long as anything is connected to the internet, then it can be fiddled with. So I don't know about you, I have multiple e-readers. Not all of them are connected to the internet. They can be, but I choose not to have them connected to the internet. Because once they're connected, any kind of update, anything like that can go through. And I have enough books on those particular readers to keep me going for a long time without having to add new content to all the ones that I've got. I did it once rather cheekily when it was many years ago when I first signed on to use Kindle Unlimited. I had borrowed a couple of books, realized my subscription was ending, and I hadn't finished them. So I left the device offline and was able to take my time finishing the particular content. So that was wrong of me. However, of course, as soon as I turned it back online, they were snatched back immediately. But it also means no one can go in and fiddle with the content I have purchased, of course, which is obviously beneficial to me. So what do we do? Well, there's not much you can do. If you want to be, as I say, legal and above board in everything, pretty much everything you buy online, be it music, films or books, particularly in our case, will be protected by DRM and DRM keys and licenses and things like that. And as I said, if you go to the more legal places where you can get DRM content, often it's probably not content you want to read anyway. Maybe it'll be very, it won't be mainstream stuff generally anyway. And as I said, you do have the option of using programs like Calibre to strip off that DRM. But again, I don't know how above board that really is. So in conclusion, it is a complex issue and it does have benefits, but of course those are primarily to the distributors and providers of the content rather than the consumer, and the consumer bears, of course, most of the drawbacks with that. It does help the content creators and publishers to prevent piracy of their product, but it restricts the rights of those who purchase it, use it, in our case, read it. So you can explore various options, as I've said. I can't really give you anything other than Calibre as a suggestion if it is something you want to go down. As I say, I can't endorse it one way or the other because I'm not sure exactly how legal it is to strip that content of its DRM protection. But there are, as I say, ways of doing that. And I'm curious as to your own thoughts on whether you think DRM is a good thing or not. And if you've had any experiences where it has come into your life, unbeknownst to you at the time, and altered anything on your devices, be it books, films, or music. So there we have it. Thank you ever so much for watching, everybody. It was another episode of Monday Musings, and I will be back again very soon. I wish you all a great week ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.